Marcus Webb stared at his datapad in disbelief. The auction timer had hit 0, and somehow, impossibly, he'd won. 500 credits for an entire transport vessel. It had to be a mistake. He sat in his cramped apartment on Station Meridian, surrounded by empty food containers and overdue bills. His cargo hauling business was 3 months behind on ship lease payments, and he'd been about to lose everything. This auction had been a desperate last resort. A Hail Mary bid on the cheapest vessel he could find. The listing had been sparse. Pre-owned transport ship. Functional engines, sold as is, no refunds. The attached images showed a battered hull, covered in scrapes and faded paint. But the engine specs looked legitimate. For 500 credits, Marcus didn't expect luxury. He expected something that could fly and carry cargo, without exploding. What he didn't expect was the message that appeared on his screen an hour later. Congratulations on your purchase. Your vessel is docked at Bay 47, Sector Keth. Documentation has been transferred. Warning: immediate retrieval required within 24 hours or ownership reverts to auction house. Marcus grabbed his jacket and headed for the transit tube. Sector Keth was on the station's industrial rim, the kind of place where ships came to die or disappear. The docking bay smelled like recycled air and leaking coolant. Bay 47 sat at the end of a long corridor, behind a rusted access door dot. When Marcus entered the security code from his datapad, the door hissed open reluctantly. The ship beyond was larger than he'd expected, easily twice the size of his current leased hauler. The hull bore scars from what looked like weapons fire, and the paint had faded to a mottled gray-green. But the landing struts were solid, and the engine housings looked intact. He climbed the loading ramp, which groaned under his weight, but held firm. The interior was dark, illuminated only by emergency lighting strips along the floor. Marcus fumbled for the main power switch near the entrance. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Marcus froze. The voice was female, accented in a way he couldn't place, and coming from somewhere deeper in the ship. "Who's there?" He called out, his hand moving instinctively to the compact stunner on his belt. "Someone who's about to ask you the same question." Footsteps echoed through the cargo hold, deliberate and unhurried. "This is private property." "Actually," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady, "it's my property. I just bought it." A figure emerged from the shadows, and Marcus's breath caught. She was tall, nearly his height, with skin the deep crimson of aged wine. Her features were humanoid, but distinctly alien angular cheekbones, eyes that glowed faint amber in the dim light, and hair that fell in white braided locks to her shoulders. She wore fitted tactical gear that had seen better days, and she moved with the fluid confidence of someone who knew exactly how dangerous she was. "You bought it," she repeated, her amber eyes narrowing. "That's impossible." Marcus held up his datapad, showing the purchase confirmation. Auction House Meridian. Final bid, 500 credits. "I have the transfer codes right here." The woman moved closer, studying the screen with an expression that shifted from disbelief to fury. "Those bastards," she muttered. "They actually went through with it." "Look," Marcus said carefully, "I don't know what's going on here, but I just spent the last of my credits on this ship. If there's some kind of mistake, the mistake," she interrupted, "was the auction house selling property that doesn't belong to them." She crossed her arms, and Marcus noticed the weapon holstered at her thigh. This ship was in secured storage. Private storage. Someone pulled strings to liquidate assets they had no right to touch. Marcus felt his stomach sink. "So what you're saying is, I just bought a stolen ship." "Not stolen, misappropriated." She tilted her head. "What's your name, human?" "Marcus Webb." "Well, Marcus Webb, I'm Vexa Thorn, and you just became the very unlucky owner of the most dangerous transport vessel in 3 sectors." This was getting worse by the second. Marcus glanced toward the exit, calculating his chances of getting a refund. Define dangerous. Vexa moved to a cargo panel and pressed her palm against it. The panel slid open, revealing a storage compartment packed with sealed containers. Each one was marked with symbols Marcus didn't recognize, but the radiation warnings were universal enough. The previous owner, Vexa said, used this ship to transport sensitive materials. Materials that several very motivated parties would kill to recover. Or kill to ensure no one else recovers. Sensitive materials, Marcus repeated slowly. You mean illegal? I mean priceless. Vexa closed the panel. And I've been living on this ship for the past 6 months, keeping those materials out of the wrong hands. Marcus rubbed his face. This was supposed to be simple. Buy a cheap ship, start hauling legitimate cargo, get his business back on track. Instead, he'd walked into someone else's mess. Why didn't you just claim ownership yourself? Because, Vexa said, her voice dropping, the people I took this ship from don't know I'm alive. If my name shows up on any official registry, they'll find me. And they'll kill everyone in a 5-kilometer radius to make sure I don't talk. Fantastic. Marcus leaned against the bulkhead. So my options are what, exactly? Return the ship and lose my money? Keep it and become a target? Vexa studied him for a long moment. There's a third option. I'm listening. We partner. You provide legitimate cover as the registered owner. I provide protection and expertise in handling what's in those cargo holds. We deliver the materials to their rightful destination, split the payment, and both walk away with enough credits to disappear wherever we want. Marcus laughed bitterly. You're suggesting I become a smuggler. I'm suggesting you become a very wealthy smuggler. Vexa stepped closer. Look, I don't trust you. You don't trust me. But right now, we're stuck with each other. That transfer went through official channels. Within hours, everyone looking for this ship will know Marcus Webb owns it now. You can run, but they'll find you. Or you can let me help you survive long enough to make this worth your while. She had a point. A terrible, dangerous point, but still a point. Marcus thought about his overdue bills, his failing business, the repo notice he'd received last week. He thought about starting over somewhere new, with enough money to actually make it work. He thought about the crimson-skinned woman standing before him, dangerous and desperate in equal measure. If I say yes, Marcus said slowly, what exactly am I signing up for? Vexa's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. A very interesting partnership, Marcus Webb. The ship's lights flickered suddenly, and an alarm began to pulse. Vexa moved immediately to the cockpit console, her fingers flying over the controls. That was fast, she muttered. What was fast? Marcus followed her. Company. Vexa pulled up a sensor display showing 3 ships approaching their position. Looks like someone noticed the ownership transfer. I hope you can fly, partner, because we're leaving. Now. Marcus stared at the approaching vessels, then at Vexa, then at the controls of a ship he'd owned for less than an hour. This was absolutely insane. He sat down in the pilot's chair. Where am I going? He asked. Vexa's smile turned sharp. Away from here. Fast. I'll handle the rest. As Marcus powered up the engines, his hands steadying on controls that felt surprisingly familiar, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed forever. He'd wanted a fresh start. Looked like he was getting one, whether he was ready or not. The ship lurched as Marcus pushed the throttle forward, engines screaming to life after months of dormancy. Behind them, the docking clamps released with a metallic shriek that echoed through the hull. Easy. Vexa gripped the co-pilot's seat as the vessel pitched sideways. You're going to tear the landing gear off. I'm a little rusty. Marcus wrestled with the controls, compensating for the ship's unexpected weight distribution. The 3 pursuing vessels were closing fast, their sensor locks painting angry red warnings across his display. Vix's fingers danced across her console. Shields are charging. Weapon systems are ... offline. Of course they are. We have weapons? Marcus banked hard, narrowly avoiding a cargo hauler that was maneuvering into its own docking bay. We had weapons. 6 months ago, before someone stripped half the components for scrap. Vexa pulled up a damage report that made Marcus's stomach drop. We've got engines, basic shields, and life support. Everything else is either missing or non-functional. A warning tone blared as energy weapons fire streaked past their starboard side. Marcus jerked the controls instinctively, sending the ship into a spinning dive that probably violated a dozen station regulations. They're not trying to disable us, Vexa observed, her voice unnaturally calm. They're trying to destroy us. That's supposed to make me feel better? Marcus pulled up hard, threading through the gap between two massive freight containers. The pursuing ships split formation, trying to flank them. It means they don't want the cargo intact. They just want us dead. Vex's amber eyes reflected the glow of the console. Take us toward the debris field, Sector 9. The debris field is a navigational hazard. Exactly. They won't expect you to be stupid enough to fly into it. Marcus glanced at her. I'm not sure that's a compliment. It's not. Now fly. He angled the ship toward the outer edge of the station, where decades of discarded equipment and failed mining operations had created a maze of floating wreckage. The pursuing vessels followed, their weapons' fire growing more aggressive as they realized where Marcus was headed. The first chunks of debris appeared on his sensors. Then his viewport twisted metal girders, shattered hull plates, and the skeletal remains of ships that had died in the void. Marcus's pulse hammered in his ears as he wove between obstacles, relying more on instinct than skill. Left! Vexa called out. Marcus banked, and a laser blast scorched the space where they'd been. One of the pursuing ships wasn't as lucky. It clipped a tumbling piece of station hull and spun out of control, disappearing into the debris cloud. 2 left, Vexa said. And we've got another problem. Of course we do. The hyperdrive is spooling up, but it needs 3 minutes to charge. We've been running on emergency power for months, and the capacitors are shot. 3 minutes might as well have been 3 hours. Marcus pushed the ship harder, diving beneath a massive derelict freighter. The hull groaned in protest, and somewhere behind them, something sparked and went dark. Was that important? He asked. Secondary cooling system. We'll be fine as long as we don't push the engines past 80%. Marcus checked his speed. They were at 92%. Vexa, I see it. She was already rerouting power, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. Just keep us alive for 2 more minutes. The ship shuddered as weapons fire grazed their shields. The remaining 2 pursuers were coordinating now, boxing them in. Marcus pulled up into a steep climb and killed the engines entirely. What are you doing? Vexa grabbed the armrest as they went into freefall. Something stupid. He let the ship tumble backward, spinning through the debris field with no power and no control. The pursuing vessels shot past them, their sensors momentarily confused by the maneuver. Marcus counted 3 seconds, then fired the engines at full burn. The ship rocketed forward, straight through the gap the pursuers had left. Vexa let out a breathless laugh that was equal parts shock and admiration. You are absolutely insane, she said. You told me to be stupid. There's a difference between stupid and suicidal. But she was smiling now, a fierce expression that transformed her face. 30 seconds to hyperspace. The pursuers had recovered, wheeling around for another attack run. Marcus pushed the engines to their limit, feeling the ship vibrate as systems strained past their tolerances. Warning lights bloomed across the console like digital flowers. Come on, he muttered. Come on, come on. Hyperdrive charged. Vexa slammed her hand down on the activation panel. Reality twisted. The stars stretched into lines, and then they were gone, hurtling through the tunnel of hyperspace while the pursuing ships and the debris field and station meridian all fell away into the distance. Marcus slumped in his seat, his hands shaking with adrenaline. Please tell me that worked. Vexa checked her sensors. We're clear. They can't track us through hyperspace, not with their sensor profiles. She leaned back, exhaling slowly. That was impressive flying. For a cargo hauler, is that your version of a thank you? Don't let it go to your head. But there was warmth in her voice now. The first hint of genuine approval. They sat in silence for a moment, the ship's engines humming as they traveled through the bright tunnel of faster-than-light space. Marcus became acutely aware of how small the cockpit was, how close Vexa sat to him. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by something else, an electric awareness of her presence. So, he said, trying to focus on practical matters, where exactly are we going? Vexa pulled up a star chart. Outpost Kelvin. It's a free trader station, no questions asked. We can make repairs, maybe upgrade some systems. And I know someone there who can help us transport the cargo safely. Someone you trust? Someone I owe money to. It's almost the same thing. She entered coordinates into the navigation system. We'll be there in 6 hours. 6 hours. In a ship that was falling apart. With a woman he'd met less than 2 hours ago. A woman who was currently looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. What? Marcus asked. You could have run, Vexa said quietly. Back at the station. You could have abandoned the ship, cut your losses, walked away. I considered it, but you didn't. Marcus shrugged. I don't like leaving problems unsolved. And you made a good point. I'm already involved. Might as well see it through. That's not the only reason. He met her amber eyes. No? Vexa stood, moving with that fluid grace that made his pulse quicken. She crossed the small space between their seats and leaned against his console, close enough that he could see the faint patterns in her crimson skin, like veins of darker red beneath the surface. You're curious, she said. About the ship. About the cargo. She tilted her head. About me. Marcus's mouth went dry. Is that a problem? That depends. Vexa reached out, her fingers brushing against his forearm. Her skin was warm, warmer than he expected. My species? We're not like humans. We're more direct about attraction. Vexa, you felt it, didn't you? During the chase. The rush, the danger, the way everything else fell away, except surviving. He had. God help him, he had. Somewhere between the weapons fire and the debris field, something had shifted. He'd stopped seeing her as a problem to solve and started seeing her as ... Something else. This is a bad idea, Marcus said, but he didn't pull away from her touch, probably. Vexa's hand slid up his arm to his shoulder. My people bond intensely when we find compatible partners. It's biological, chemical. Once we start, it's hard to stop. You're warning me off? I'm giving you a choice. Her amber eyes held his. We can be professional, partners in business only. Or we can acknowledge this thing between us and see where it leads. Marcus knew what the smart choice was. The safe choice. Keep things simple. Complete the job. Take his payment and never see Vexa Thorne again. But he'd spent his whole life making safe choices, and where had it gotten him? Broke, alone, 1 bad month away from losing everything. Maybe it was time to take a risk. He stood, bringing himself closer to her. What if I want to see where it leads? Vexa's breath hitched slightly. Then you should know something else about my species. What's that? We don't do anything halfway. And then she kissed him. It wasn't gentle. There was nothing tentative about the way Visa's hands gripped his shirt, pulling him closer, or the way her mouth claimed his with an intensity that made his knees weak. She tasted like something foreign and sweet, and her warmth seemed to radiate through his entire body. Marcus's hands found her waist, feeling the lean muscle beneath the tactical gear. Vexa made a sound low in her throat, pleased and predatory, and pressed him back against the pilot's seat. "Vexa," he managed between kisses. "The autopilot is engaged." She nipped at his lower lip. "We have 6 hours before we reach Kelvin Station." 6 hours, Marcus repeated, his brain struggling to form coherent thoughts. 6 hours. Vexa pulled back just enough to meet his eyes, and there was something fierce and wild in her expression. Plenty of time to figure out if this partnership is going to work. Her lips found his again, and Marcus stopped trying to think. The ship carried them through hyperspace, the stars streaking past outside, while inside the cockpit, two people who'd been strangers that morning discovered a connection that was anything but professional. Then they finally broke apart. Both breathing hard, Vexa rested her forehead against his. "Still think this is a bad idea?" she asked. Marcus laughed breathlessly. "The worst idea. Absolutely terrible. Good." She smiled, wild and beautiful. "I like terrible ideas." Outside, hyperspace flowed around them, carrying them toward an uncertain future. But in that moment, with Vexa's warmth pressed against him and her smile lighting up the dim cockpit, Marcus Webb decided that maybe, just maybe, winning that auction had been the best mistake of his life.